Hey everybody, welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. I'm Dan, and we're continuing my ongoing theme for this month, which if you're watching this later on in the year, it's May of 2023, and I've been focusing on false allegations. And one of the things that even I don't realize or didn't realize is this is a much bigger problem than I think anybody knows at this point. So I've been illustrating some various things that men in particular go through. It does happen to women too, by the way. I'm not trying to exclude them, but it's primarily men who are the victims of it. And I've been trying to share some stories. So I am going to be just totally honored to have as my guest today Ryan Kerrison. Let me bring Ryan on. Hey, Ryan, thank you for coming on the show. Ryan was a victim of a false allegation. I'm going to let Ryan tell his story, but I will tell you, one of the reasons I reached out to him is several of my followers had reached out to me, Ryan. They saw your story. It was on the BBC, I believe. And they reached out to me and said, "Oh, you got to talk to this guy." I said, "Okay." And I reached out to him, and here he is. So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Dan, and thanks to those people who've reached out as well. Appreciate that.
Yeah, there were three or four of them, and I would love to give them credit, but I don't remember who it was. I'm an old man. My brain is gone. But I did follow you on TikTok and started hearing you talking about your story. And then from there, saw the interview that was done on the BBC and actually read some of the articles in some papers. So rather than me tell your story, why don't you first of all tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to share about yourself personally, and then we'll get into the whole nightmare that you've been through.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dan. So yeah, I'm obviously Ryan. I'm 27 years old. My job role is a drug and alcohol practitioner. So I work with people in addictions, and I try and help them on their journey to recover. I have my daughter full time. I work full time father. Have a lot of support from my family, my mother and my grandma. I enjoy sports, predominantly football, cycling. Just like to stay connected with friends really as well. And at this moment in time, because of my experiences, I like to try and support other people who've gone through similar things that I've gone through in the past. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I'm honoured to be here, and willing to do anything to get the word out there and support people.
Now, for those of you listening in, you might notice that Ryan has a bit of an accent to us Americans. Of course, we have an accent to him. So when he talks about football, he's talking about that other sport, soccer, for my American friends. I always like to tease you guys because we call that the other football. Or
Yeah.
I played football at many different levels, and it was funny in high school. When you got cut from the football team, you went to the soccer team. It was literally, our field was here, the soccer training field was here, and you got sent over. But the other side of it was our kicker played soccer, and he only came on the football team when we had games or at the end of practices, and he was phenomenal. So I'm just joking about the soccer thing. It's not
I
my
hear it.
it's not my sport. I have to be honest. If anything that can be 0-0 tie, I just can't live with it. I'm sorry. But anyway, all kidding aside. So yeah, well, it was interesting to hear that you do counseling, I guess, for drug and alcohol. Where were you when I needed you about 35 years ago? I was
Not
an al-
alive, not born.
I was an alcoholic back in the day. I have not hidden that. But it's interesting that you do that now. We're going to talk about your experiences, but I gotta believe that what you went through probably helps you with the people that you're working with now.
Yeah, definitely. The amount of times I have clients come through the door who have gone through similar stuff to me, really, and it's really hard to, not self-disclose too much within that professional role.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's something that's always interested me, helping others through addiction and through recovery and changing their life for the better. Really, it's not just about the drug and alcohol. It's about moving forward in their life from, traumatic experiences, PTSD. There's a hell of a lot of reasons why people go away and use and, become addicted. And, a lot of people fall in addiction because of experiences like mine, because they
Hmm.
couldn't handle the pressure, they couldn't handle the trauma. It's the only way they get out of it, really. And I'm quite thankful sitting here, you know, thinking I could have easily fell into that category as well. I could have taken the drugs and alcohol because of my experiences, but I didn't. And at some point, I do want to share down the line how I did manage that and how they cope with that. So
Oh,
yeah,
would love to talk about it in a little bit if you don't mind, because
yeah, definitely, yeah,
as you and I were talking before we went on air, I've done domestic violence peer counseling and saw the same thing you're talking about. Is people go through traumas and they're trying to self medicate through it,
yeah,
and it's no one wants to get addicted to whatever drugs, alcohol, whatever. It kind of just happens in a lot of cases, is the way I always put it. I'm very simplifying, I know that. But
hmm,
it's, when you're trying to deal with traumas, sometimes that's what you have to do. Good,
yeah,
bad, or indifferent. That's the reality. All right, Ryan. I am not going to tell your story, my friend. I would rather you did, because I will tell you, if you could bear with me just a second, I've read several things, and having worked in newspapers and media and all that, I know reporters sometimes spin things a little bit. I know why they do it. They got to sell papers. That said, I will say the things that I've read generally I thought were pretty fair, not just to you, but to your abuser. One thing I did read is you prefer not to use her name, and I'm going to respect that for you. I think it's the appropriate thing to do. But why don't you just kind of give us, however long you want to take, how it all happened? I know you've initially met, I think it was like 10 years ago, give or take. So I'll let you just tell your story from here.
yeah, not a problem. So it started really. We ended up meeting at a party. It was 2014, 2015. And we met through a mutual friend, really. And at this point, I never had a girlfriend, never fell in love. I was just focused on my football. I was focusing on my career, focusing on education. And yeah, she was really, really caring, loving. As I said before, she ticks a lot of boxes for me at that stage. And yeah, we got together fairly quickly as well, to be fair, reflecting back, we got together fairly quickly. And the relationship was healthy. It was good. I won't lie, it was good. Sadly, my dad passed away because of cancer, and that did affect the relationship quite a bit. Um, because her stepfather, who she's close to, has cancer as well, so it did affect different aspects of our relationship. Um, and then fast forward a couple of years, we had a baby together, we got a child together, who I have full custody of at the moment, and it will stay that way. And around 2017 time, she started going to a young mums college to get an education, and that's with other young mums, really, technically.
Mm-hmm.
And she got into the wrong crowd. I saw it from a mile away. At this time, I was a youth and community worker. I did a lot of work around mental health, a lot of work around drug and alcohol, a lot of work around, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, that sort of stuff. So I could see it from a mile away. It was going to be bad news. And I did try and, you know, help her see that, but it wasn't happening. It was her friends at the end of the day. She never felt as much connected with other people really. So I stuck by it, and the relationship started became very unhealthy at that point. She was stopping me seeing certain people, including family. She stopped me, tried stopping playing soccer. I'll call it soccer for this case.
Okay.
Um, she tried stopping playing soccer, and that's always been my life, and it became very controlling. And I'm not ashamed to admit, I believe when you are around toxic people, you become toxic yourself. So there was some things that I said that I regret saying. You know, I tried stopping her, seeing certain people, and you know, reflecting back on that, it wasn't healthy. But yeah, you know, when it comes to being around toxic, you do become toxic, I believe. So eventually, I found out that she started taking drugs. As far as I'm aware, it was pills. There was cocaine involved in there, cannabis as well. And that's one of the reasons why I became a practitioner now, really. Um, and I've always been anti-drug. You know, I've always hated the idea of it. And when she fell into that, I just thought, for me, who's someone who doesn't take drugs and we have a baby together, I just thought that was very, very dangerous and very, very unhealthy, really.
Hmm.
And I started putting boundaries in place. I tried putting boundaries in place. You know, I said to her, if this behavior continues, you know, if you're going to go out and take drugs, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. And it's simple as that. And, you know, she promised that she'd stop, but it didn't. And I remember one significant night where she told me she was going to go out to her friend's house and have a few drinks, which was absolutely fine. I was fine looking after our daughter. And um, she ended up taking her nightclubbing clothes out, we'll call it, you know, dresses. And she went round town and started drinking with people she didn't know. She used to go missing, leave her friends all the time, used to walk in through the door at 7 o'clock in the morning when I had my daughter and I'd work the next day. Um, and to have that on you, when you love somebody and they're doing stuff like that, they are putting drugs into their body, dangerous drugs, and they are going out round town, leaving their friends and turning the phone off. It has such a mental impact on you. Your mental health does get impacted because of it. And I found myself, doubting a relationship, really. You know, I was in love with her. But it came to the point where I was thinking, do I actually want to be in this position? Do I actually want to be with her? And I gave a chance after chance, and nothing was changing. And I felt like the only way I'm going to change something here is if I change myself for in this. And by that point, I said, right, I'm leaving.
You know, what's interesting though, Ryan, is just to stop you for 1 second, if you don't mind. You're
Yeah.
27 now, so you met her at 17, 18. You
It was
were
around, it was, yeah, I met her around, I think I was 19.
19. Okay.
Yeah.
But you think about it, you're
So,
going through all this basically in your early 20s, right? I
yeah,
mean, there's not a lot of experience. I was, it was a while ago, but at one time I was around that age, and went through some traumas then. You don't have. I don't want to make it like you're not mature, but at that point, as a guy, I'm the same way, right? We are not that mature to be able to take
yeah,
that on. That is one hell of a load, and you had a baby daughter at that point, correct?
yeah, that's right. We had our daughter. I was 20 at the time. Um, and I never planned to have a baby at that age as well. I wanted to progress in my career. I wanted to, you know, travel and see the world and etc. So it came at a bit of a shock for me, but I had to adapt to that, and I did. And you know, I have my daughter full time now, and she's my absolute world. She's the reason why I'm here today. And you know, I was young, and I've matured quite a lot through this. Let's
I'll
just
bet
say
you
that.
have, my friend.
Yeah,
How
honestly,
how could you not, right?
yeah, exactly. So, you know, it was my first relationship, first time I've been in love. And they say love is blind, don't they? And I think a part of that is true. Um, so yeah, looking back at it, it was healthy at one point, but that was the honeymoon phase, as we call it.
Hmm.
And it became very unhealthy. And like you say, when the drugs came into it and going out round, you know, night clubbing to stupid o'clock in the morning and turning the phone off and yeah, I just felt this isn't for me. I can't do it no more. And I left. And I left. And she didn't like the fact that I left and I took things to my own hands because throughout our relationship, every time she threatened to break up with me, it was me chasing her. I was doing all the chasing. I was putting as much effort as I can into the relationship. And at this point, I just went, that's it. I'm done, sort of thing. And she reacted negatively to that, very negatively. You know, she was saying to me, if you don't come round to my house now and move back in, you won't see. our daughter again, just making loads of threats to me, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said to her, it's not fair on me. It's not fair on our daughter, me coming and going all the time, and you behaving like this. Was arguing as well. Not around our child, but the relationship became unhealthy, more unhealthy because of it, and it just wasn't great, really. And yeah, she was threatening me, if I don't come back to her house, this will happen, that will happen. But I said to her, no, I'm not coming back. I'm going to stay at my mum's for a while and just, you know, regroup, really, mentally regroup and see what I actually do need and try and repair. Um, and again, she didn't like that. And it was basically her way or no way. And I thought, it's been your way for a long time and I can't do it. And basically, she said, if you don't come back, we're over, we're done. And I went, that's fine, we're done.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
You know, I,
that's when it that's when it all started.
here's the domestic violence peer counselor in me going, dude, you were a victim of domestic violence at that point, because that's exactly what was going on, right?
Yeah.
I went through it too, so I can relate to that. How were your initial reactions to just that part of it? Like, you were strong enough to leave, which I'll be honest with you, most guys are not. All right.
Mm,
It took me a while.
yeah.
Um, what were like if you don't mind sharing, like your feelings at the time, like because I think one of the things I want to do is get guys to realize that we all have feelings. They may be different, right? Um, but they're not so different also.
Yeah,
So if you don't
definitely.
mind sharing a little bit about how you were feeling at that point.
Absolutely. A big part of my job now is CBT therapy stuff, and we look at feelings, so I don't mind sharing at all. Um, don't get me wrong, it took me a while to leave. It wasn't just that moment. There was times where I wanted to leave, but I felt like I couldn't. I was just holding on for our daughter. But when I actually did leave, well, before I did leave, I was just feeling, partly depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
felt depression. I felt anxiety when she was going out all the time and turning the phone off, not knowing where she was she still alive? Who was she with? Is she in danger? I felt like, I was worried for our daughter as well. Like, how is this going to impact our daughter at the same time? And then when I left, when I got all my stuff and I left, there was a mixture between a sense of relief that I've done it
Mm-hmm.
and I have some sort of freedom back. But there was also that, feeling of heartbreak. I was heartbroken because,
Yep.
like I said, I did love her,
Yep.
and I loved her for a long time afterwards. I'm not gonna lie, I loved her for a long time afterwards. Even when she was accusing me of stuff, I still loved her. And it only took when I went to jail for the first time. That's when my love was gone. I needed jail really. That did a lot of good to me really. I won't lie. Even though it was traumatic and I hated it, that was a really big turning point for me. But the feelings around it at that time, isolated. I felt isolated. I felt depression. I felt anxiety. I felt worried. I just felt that my life was falling apart, and there was only one person that could save it, and that was myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take sacrifices. I had to sacrifice a lot of things, the relationship, risking the bonds, the relationship with my daughter as well. I wouldn't see her as much. I knew that because I lived with my partner with her at the time. So I knew I wouldn't see her as much, but I couldn't be a father. I couldn't be a loving, caring father that our daughter needed if I was in that state of depression and anxiety and worry and everything else with that.
You know, I hope anyone that's listening to this is hearing what Ryan is saying. He is not the exception, he's the rule, right? All of those feelings that he's sharing, I experienced them. I've talked with, over the years, thousands of guys. Everybody goes through what he's talking about here. You feel guilty for not keeping the relationship together. You feel
Mm.
isolated. You mentioned that. That's probably the biggest thing I have found in my times and working with people is guys is that they feel very isolated.
Yeah.
Everything that you said, I hope people take that to heart, because one of the things that people don't realize, they tend to think guys have it easy when a relationship ends. No, we don't. If anything, it's as hard. I would even postulate it's harder because, like you said, you had to not walk away from your daughter, but she was not going to be as involved in you and her life, and vice versa. Just the nature of the things. So I commend you for sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And what I will add to that as well, with emotions and feelings, we are all human. Men are human, and anger and frustration and worry and anxiety and depression are all human emotions.
Mm-hmm.
We have the right to feel those emotions. And the minute we start sharing those emotions, we get help with that, the bigger our world becomes. We don't feel isolated no more. We get the right support that we need. And when we get the right support and we surround ourselves by positive people, we are able to move on in our life. And I've done exactly that in my experiences. If I don't open up about my feelings or talk about my situations, I won't be here today, and I won't be sat with you either, Dan. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So, when people have that stigma, men can't feel emotions, we absolutely can. And that's the main reason why suicide rates tip more towards the men, because we don't talk about our feelings.
Exactly. It's one of the things I've shared in the past on the show and in various areas is I was SA'd and R'd at 13 by a woman. I went through abusive childhood and abusive first marriage, and I bottled it all up. You know, I
Mm.
I I did what most guys do, right? It wasn't until I was about 40 years old that I started talking about it. And I don't want to make light of this, but it was almost instantaneous that things started to change for me, right? I let it out. I let the genie out of the bottle. I've used that phrase
Yeah.
before. And yes, men, if you're listening, guys, and you're going through anything, I don't care how small it is, let it out, because what Ryan's talking about, you talk about the male unaliving rate. A large part of that is because we're bottling up everything. We feel like we have to be strong. We can't show emotions. We're human beings, as Ryan said, and we absolutely can let those feelings out. And the other thing I would say is, if you're a guy and a buddy comes to you and he wants to talk, listen, let him share it. And I think for the most part, guys do that. So you've now split up from her, and as traumatic as all that was, which was pretty traumatic, then things got worse. If that a fair statement for me to say?
Yeah, you can say
What
that.
share what you would like to on that?
Yeah, even after I broke up with her, she was my first girlfriend. She's the mother of my child, and I still loved her, and I'll admit that now. And I found out that she went and she, as we call it, slept with somebody else. She became intimate with somebody else. You know, less than a week after we broke up, we was together for nearly 3 years at this point as well. So to walk up, to break up in a relationship after 3 years, she proposed to me as well, and we had a child together. For her to go away and be intimate with somebody else and have that person around my daughter, that was very, very tough. A very, very tough pill to swallow, and that just added on to the mental impact, emotional impact. So I'll admit I did the exact same. I went away and I started, going out with my mates, clubbing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I met up with other women. And as soon as she found out that I was trying to move on, that's when the allegation started. And I do believe the allegation did stem from jealousy, from spite. Um, she didn't like the shoe on the other foot, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when the allegation started. And the very first allegation, when it very first came about, she asked me to look after our daughter at her house while she went out around town. I was perfectly fine with that. I was spending time with my daughter. I'm not going to turn that down. And when I got there, um, it just became very volatile straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it wasn't just about me going there and looking after our daughter. It just turned out arguments sake, and from both ends. I'll admit, from both ends, it just wasn't healthy at all. And there was a time where she got hold of my phone. She got hold of my phone, and she went through it, and she saw messages of me talking to a friend who was a female, and this female was just a friend. It wasn't nothing intimate. She was just a friend who was there supporting me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she took that the completely wrong way, saying that I've gone out and I've done this, I've done that, everything that she's done to me basically. And she smashed my phone up. She threw my phone at the floor, at the floor. She threw my phone. It smashed, and glass went everywhere. Glass cut her, and I do that because I didn't see any glass cut her. I didn't see no marks on her. And then I've gone downstairs to leave the property, and there was a PlayStation 4. My PlayStation 4 was in the bag. And at that time, PlayStation 4s are quite expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wasn't earning a huge amount of money, so I couldn't afford to lose that. And gaming was a big part of my self-care at that time, connecting with other people online. And she threatened to smash the PlayStation up in the bag. So I've gone, absolutely not. You're not going to do that. I've grabbed my bag and off. She's got all my bag. She's got all of it, and I've grabbed my bag and I pulled it off her. And I walked towards the door, going to walk out, and then she grabbed my arm. She grabbed my arm, and I've just gone like that just to get her off me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've walked out the door. And then the next minute, the police have been called. Apparently, I've caused criminal damage. I've caused, I think we call it ABH here now, actually bodily harm through cuts from the phone. And apparently, I assaulted her as well. And the police was trying to investigate me and charge me with assault. In the eyes of the law here, it's classed as battery, which sounds really, really bad, battery.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I never physically touched her. I only grabbed my bag and I grabbed it off her out of her grasp. And that's assault. That's assault here in the UK, apparently.
In the US, I think that would be classified as assault also. I don't believe it would be bad. I'm not a lawyer, but very similar, though.
Yeah, and even after that, I never physically touched her. She physically touched me because she grabbed my arm and tried dragging me back, keep me in the property.
Which, by the way, that would be assault.
Exactly that.
Yep.
And there was I got arrested. Obviously pleaded my innocence. I didn't do it. I told him what happened. I said to him, yeah, I dragged my bag off there. It's my property. It's got an expensive item in there. She's trying to smash it up. She's grabbed all of my hands, all of my arm, keeping me in there. And I've not touched her when I've done this. I've just moved my arm up the way and I've walked out, and that's it. And the triads charging me with that, and I got a caution. I was put on police bail, and I was told to go to the court. And this was February time when this all happened. By the way, February 2018, and I was told to go to court. I think it was around May time, but I was back and forth. I was going to court and there was nothing really happening. So I just thought, it's a waste of time. You know what I mean? It's just a waste of time. And then eventually it came to June time, and this is where it really took its toll. Between February and June 2018, when I was on police bail, accusations was happening. So she was accusing me of breaching police bail.
If you don't mind me interrupting for 1 second, Ryan, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify for people what police bail is. It sounds to me equivalent of a restraining order.
Yeah, in a way.
In a way? Yeah. Okay. I just want to, kind of give some perspective on that because we don't use that term here in these states. Yeah. So
with police bail, it can fall under that category of a restraining order, but a police bail here could be if you, let's say, for instance, if you're under investigation for substances, for drugs, if you test positive on a substance and you're on police bail, that'll be classed as a breach. So it's not just restraining orders, but my police bail was basically not to attend her house, not to contact her, not to go near her house, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard because we got a daughter together.
I was just going to say, you've got to go there at some point, right, to get your daughter, right?
I've got to have that contact, some form, some way. And don't get me wrong, I didn't contact her. I did it through family,
Hmm.
to try and my best to go along the police bail, the police conditions, and also maintain a relationship with my daughter as well. But the allegations was just ongoing. I was constantly being arrested, even when I had witness statements, witnesses with me, even when I was on CCTV, um, I was still arrested. The allegation was made, bang, arrested,
Hmm.
without even looking into it. So the amount of time that I spent in police custody overall in 2018 was around 20 times, maybe even more than 20 times. And there was times where I was held in custody for 22 hours, 23 hours. There was even a time where I spent more than that, and the police actually requested to keep me in longer to investigate me even more. So again, the mental strain it had on me, knowing I'm losing everything in front of me, I'm losing the relationship with my daughter. I'm losing my mental health. I'm losing my physical health.
Hmm.
My job is at risk. My financial status is going down. My reputation is being tainted at this point as well. And then all those allegations that was being made had an impact on the court hearing in June. So the judge stood up. I was in front of the judge, and he read out all these incidents that happened, based off false allegations, and a lot of them was NFA, which stands for no further action. I was released from custody, and it, I was told by my solicitor at the time, and I did mention this in my other interviews as well. I was advised by my solicitor to plead guilty on a basis.
Hmm.
So at that time, I just wanted it to be over and done with. I just wanted to move on with my life. I wanted to have my daughter in my life. I wanted to just have all this trauma and all this experience be over and done with. And I was inexperienced.
Hmm.
The first time I've been involved with the police, it's the first time I've been involved with courts. I just thought my solicitor knows best. So I'm going to plead guilty on the basis. And the solicitor told me, you'll get a 6 month restraining order and a £200 fine, which is around, I think, $250. I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, I'll take it because I just want to move on. I'm sick of it all. As long as she stops with these accusations, I'll do it. And then what I actually got was a 2 year restraining order, which was later abused. And I think I got more than £200 fine. And I got given a conviction, which I never even got told about.
Yeah,
I think before.
that's something like I've had guys bring similar situations up to me where the lawyers will say, "Look, here's what you're facing, but if you agree to a plea, you're going to get this." And sometimes it is that, sometimes it's more like your situation. Again, I am not a lawyer. I'm not giving a
Yeah.
legal advice, but man, gentlemen, if you're in that position, you need to think long and hard before you take that plea because they're going to try and scare you by saying, well, you could go to jail for, let's say, 10 years. I'm just picking a number up. So, yeah, it sounds okay. All right, I'm not going to go to jail. I might get probation or a restraining order and a couple $100 fine. That sounds like a win. It's not because it can come back
Yeah.
to bite you as you found out.
Yeah. And, my solicitor even mentioned jail to me, and that was just, I just felt absolutely no chance. I'll do anything to avoid that. I just want to move on. So I
And to
pleaded
be
guilty on the
fair, they're
basis.
not lying about that. It is a distinct possibility. They're not
Yeah.
lying. They're doing their job, I think, in telling you that. But you have to educate yourself as to what the
Mm.
reality is,
Yeah.
because as I don't mean to interrupt your story, but we come to find out as you're going to continue on, that did not end it.
No, definitely not. And like I said before, if I knew what I know now in terms of the law and the rights and the consequences that has, I would never have pleaded guilty. I've challenged it. I would have gone all the way. But obviously, it never happened. That never happened. I did plead guilty on the basis. I regret doing so, but I believe everything happens for a reason. And if I didn't plead guilty on a basis, I might not be here today. So, I do believe it happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as clear as day, I said to the judge when he gave the charges, and he said to me, "You got a 2 restraining order." I said to the judge, "What's going to happen if she accuses me? If she alleges that I breached this restraining order? What's going to happen?" And his words was, well, she'll have to prove it. And I went, right. I went, right, okay, I'll hold you to that. Within 2 days, I'm standing back up in court in front of the same judge, being accused of breaching a restraining order. And the judge, you could just tell he doesn't like me. You could tell he didn't like me.
Hmm.
And I remember saying to him, I told you it was going to happen. I told you she was going to accuse me of breaching it because she'd done that previously with bail conditions. And she's just gone and done that. She's abusing it. But they didn't listen to me. I believe all the police saw and all the prosecutors saw and the judge saw was a 6 foot man who was being accused of domestic abuse. And as a female, a 4'11" female stood there crying, playing the victim.
Hmm.
So they're just gone, is guilty.
And that, I've talked about this before, and I'm not defending them in any way, by the way, but from their perspective, that is a fear they have, because if they err on the side of, well, okay, I got to protect Ryan, and then God forbid you're a bad guy, which you're not, and something happens to her, then it goes in the news, this judge let it go. So I mean, I understand that perspective on their side, but
Yeah.
it that presumption that you're talking about, it exists, right? The guy is guilty. You see it from law enforcement. The police are trained that way. I've sat through police trainings. Back when in my domestic violence peer counseling days, I had to go through various trainings. I was there when the police were trained, and they're trained to assume the 6 foot guy. I'm 6'1", so I can relate to it. I'm not a small guy. Versus, my ex was 5'6" and half my weight. So who are they going to believe? Same scenario situation for you, and that is a common thing that you see, and this is why we're doing shows like this, is to educate people and make them understand the size doesn't really matter, right? And stop looking at it from a gender perspective, because as Ryan's about to tell you, it progressed even further.
Yeah. Since doing all this TikTok stuff, I've noticed that a hell of a lot of men are out there, and when they report that they're a victim of domestic abuse, they get laughed at by authorities. I've heard it a lot here in the UK.
It happens
That when,
worldwide, my friend. I've talked with
yeah,
men from all over the world. It's
yeah,
universal.
and even during that time in police custody, when I got interviewed, there was times where I said, she's hit me because she did at one point. She did hit me. I'm not saying she did all the time. And I was a victim of domestic abuse. And when I reported that to the police, absolutely nothing happened.
Hmm.
Nothing. But as soon as she picks the phone up and says, Ryan's done this with absolute no evidence whatsoever, bang, I'm in cuffs. And that's why I think the processes around it and the laws around it needs to change. And when an allegation is made, the person who's being accused has to prove that they didn't do it. But why on earth? Why do we live in a world where someone makes an accusation? They don't have to prove it until further down the line when the damage has already been done. And I
Right.
don't understand that. I don't understand it.
In the United States, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. I'm sure the UK is the
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
It doesn't apply in these cases. You're guilty until
no,
proven innocent. And even if you prove yourself innocent, a lot of times you're still guilty. We talked about it with
yeah.
Jason last week. He's been completely exonerated, but yet people treat him as if he's guilty.
Mm.
It's something, like you said, I've had guys reaching out to me, and their stories are the same, right? I was proven innocent. I was the victim. It also talks about how the proponents of, helping the women will often say, look at the statistics. It's guys don't get attacked, abused, whatever term you want to use, as much. Well, my abuse, the abuse that I took, doesn't show anywhere in the statistics. There was no police reports taken,
Yeah,
anything. Your situation
yeah.
sounds exactly the same, right? You told them, hey, here's the situation. You were a victim, but yet it's never going to show in the statistics, because it's going to show she
Mm.
was the victim, because when they do the statistics, they're going to look that you got arrested, not her at the time.
Mm.
Obviously things changed, but it speaks to how this problem needs to be talked about, brought out at all levels, societal, political, everything.
Yeah.
Because there are, as you just said, a lot of guys going through this. And let me be very clear in my perspective, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. We're not trying to downplay anything that happens to female victims in any way, shape, or form. Not in the slightest bit. My heart goes out to them every bit as much as it does to Ryan or any man. But it's just interesting how the whole judicial system, law enforcement, all that view it. So when they were interviewing you, I just, if you don't mind me sidetracking a little bit here,
Yeah.
did they come at you with like an attitude? And what I mean by that is, like, when I had the police show up one time in mine, they were going to arrest me. The only reason I didn't get arrested was I lived in a townhouse, so the people right next door, they heard everything. They were actually the
Mm.
ones that called the police. And they're like, no, 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 no. It wasn't him. She attacked him. We heard everything. That's the only reason I didn't go to jail. But the cops had pretty serious attitudes towards me. You know,
Mm.
did you experience the same? Like, they were like physically doing things to me.
Yeah, I wasn't physically um abused by the police. And I do think a big part of that was because every time I was arrested, I had someone with me. I think maybe if I was arrested alone,
Ah,
things might have been different. But when the accusation started, I started looking more into the law and my rights as a human being, and I started to use my rights to protect me a little bit. So when it came to me being arrested or me being spoken to by the police, my phone would be in their face. I'd be saying badge number, your name, where we at, the time. I'd be getting all information I need. So, physically, no, I wasn't abused. And the attitudes with some police officers, I won't say all of them because some of the police officers that arrested me at times was okay, you know, and I think the ones that was okay with me understood a little bit.
mm-hmm.
And there was times where there was officers who had an attitude with me, and because I was innocent, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to mirror your attitude here. You give me attitude, you're getting it straight back. And again, I stood up for myself. I used my rights and the law to protect myself. It came to a point in the police interview in the custody that, and this is one of the issue with the UK police. I'm not sure what's like the US, but every time I got arrested, there was always somebody else dealing with the case. So that person interviewing me had no idea about the history. So they didn't see no patterns. They didn't see that I was arrested before. Or if they did, they've seen the report saying Ryan was arrested at this time on this date, but they had no in-depth information. And that's where the issue comes, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's going to get changed. And it's funny because there was a time nearer towards June. I think it was after prison, actually. I can't remember off the top of my head. I remember getting interviewed by this one person, and she had absolutely no idea what she was doing. Absolutely no idea what she was doing. And even my solicitor at the time said, you've got this interviewer, and she has no clue. The police, basically, she was really low down. And I thought, you know what? I think I think the police knew what was going on a little bit. They knew that I was the victim, or what was being accused wasn't actually true. Because if they believed that some of the accusations were true, they'd have got someone really high up in there to interview me to try and, you know, manipulate me or try and get me to, admit something or whatever it is. But the fact that the police had an officer interview me and they had no idea, I think for me it signifies that there's a lot of, they didn't really believe it themselves at one point.
It's yeah, I get your point. It's almost like they were trying to help you in a manner of speaking, right?
Yeah.
Because they could have brought in. I mean, there are. I half my family were police officers back in the day. There are some very good ones,
Yeah.
who can get you to say things you even if you're innocent. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it happens.
Mm.
So maybe they were trying to help you. I kudos to them if they were. We're speculating, right? But who knows?
Yeah, maybe. And like you said, there is some very good officers out there, and I will touch on that, you know. But yeah, it even, June time, stood up in court yet again, reached a restraining order, and I said to the judge, I thought it was going to happen, and he remanded me. He sent me to prison, and this was for this was on the Friday, and I was due to stand up in court again on the Monday, so I had a weekend in jail. Um, and it was on a video link, so it was like this,
Hmm.
the hearing, and I was expected to get out because there was nothing on me. You know, she accused me of breaching restraining order by going round to her house, throwing stones at the window, ringing her up, texting her, and I thought, well, I've got a witness statement. I was at my grandma's house with my friends. I got two witnesses there. I was on CCTV walking down one of the main roads here where I live, and I've not texted her, I've not called her. She actually called me, and I actually called the non-emergency police line to say this is what's happening. So I thought they've got absolutely nothing in common because I've done nothing wrong. So on the Monday, I was expecting to get out and go home, but it didn't happen. The same judge then remanded me into the prison for a longer time, 6 weeks, I think it was. I spent 56 days in total the first time round. Um, so weeks upon weeks,
Almost 2 months, right?
almost 2 months,
Almost
yeah.
2 months.
And that time period was the lowest point of my life. I said it before and I'll say it again. That was the lowest point of my life. And I missed my daughter's second birthday. That was the first birthday I missed, and that was the hardest day of my life, even
Hmm.
to this day. And that was the first time I felt true depression and I felt suicidal. I felt there was no way out. I lost my freedom. I lost my liberty. I lost everything that mattered to me. I was losing my job. I was losing my daughter. Everything was just gone in the flash. Just like that, it was gone. And that was based off false allegations. It was based off allegations with no evidence and without the police or lawyers or anybody looking into it.
Hmm.
It was assumed a lot of the case was pushed under the carpet. It was assumptions. That's what it was. And that's where things need to change. And like I said, that period, the prison time, was the hardest point. And I will say this: if I did do it, if I did something wrong and I went to prison, fair enough, I'd say I'm gonna do it.
Hmm.
But because I was in there as an innocent man, and I'm sure there's a lot of innocent men in jail as well, and a lot of innocent women as well in jail, that because I was there, I was confined. It was the hardest point in my life. The one positive that came out of jail for me was the fact that I lost all feelings towards her. That was it.
Hmm. I mean, it's sad though that you had to get to that point to do that, right? But I
Yeah,
understand. I totally
definitely.
understand that. Just a quick side note. I'm just curious. How were the other inmates towards you with that? Because I've heard other guys who've gone to jail for false allegations, and they've said, you know, I've heard both sides.
Yeah.
Some of the inmates are like, "Yep, we know what you're talking about." Other ones, because especially if there's a child involved, then prison justice can come into play. Did you have to deal with anything like that? I'm just curious. And again, if you don't want to share, that's fine.
I'm happy to share. No, so basically, when I was in prison, I kept my head down. There was points where people did ask me what I was in for, as people do, as inmates do, and I just said, I've been accused of doing this and doing that. I didn't go into too much detail about it, but I just said I've been accused of, betraying order, that sort of thing. Um, I think, and this isn't like bigging myself up, but you could tell that I wasn't fit, I wasn't made for jail. And I think a lot of people knew that. And I think because of my background and the way I presented myself in jail, I think people kind of knew. And people kind of knew I wasn't guilty and I didn't actually do it. I was in there as an innocent man. I think people knew. But, in terms of like abuse or whatever, no, it didn't really happen. I did meet some people in jail who actually are really good people. Believe it or not, I met some better people in jail than I have out here in the community. Let's just say that. But I didn't experience any conflicts. None of that really. I did have a group of people in there who I was friends with, let's call it, but there was
Yep.
all right sort of thing. So
It's just interesting to me how everybody's experience is different with it. I've talked with other
yeah,
guys, like I said, it was horrible for them.
yeah. What I will add with that as well is when I went publicly about my story the first time, um, when I went on TV, I my mum knows somebody who was in jail at the time. It was out there on TV, and they actually saw my interview in the prison. And when this person came out of prison and went and spoke to my mum, apparently the full prison saw it and there was singing my praises. There was all over it. There was absolutely buzzing. And I can imagine a lot of people in those jails have been what I've been through. They're in there because of false allegations, or they're in there because of ex-partners. So, just on to that prison stuff, really. People in jail have seen it, and they've related to it, they've identified with it, and they've actually encouraging me, they're supporting me inside, really. So, yeah.
It's interesting how it's really not much different than the outside world, right? There's this perception people have of inmates and all that. They're human
Yeah.
beings just like us, right? And they can tell when, like you said, they kind of knew, especially when your story got out. You mentioned your mom. One of the questions that I would like to ask is, when this first started and all the way through it, what were the reactions of your immediate family, extended family, friends, and so forth? I'm sure it was different for different people, but in overall, how would you say it was?
I mean, for intimate family, which includes my mum and my brother and my younger brother, he was 11 at the time, and my grandma, it was very, very difficult for them. My brother had to go to counselling because of it all, and I'll get to that later on.
Hmm.
And I could tell my mum was putting on a brave face when she came to visit me in prison. I could tell. And my best friend, who supported me throughout it all and still does, obviously, he's like a brother to me. He said to me, "You don't even want to know how your mum was when you was in there. You don't even want to know what she was like." And that to me, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible to hear. With friends, they knew it was lies because they knew because there was times where she accused me of doing something while I was sat in their living room, or
Hmm.
I was sat with them. I was out. They knew it was lies. So for them, they was frustrated. But intimate family, it was a very, very difficult time for them. Um, yeah, it was very difficult, and even with like the community wise, there's a lot of people who know me, not personally, but just know of me, and even they knew that it wasn't true because my mum's well known from where we live. A lot of people do know me, so a lot of people was like, Ryan hadn't done this, he
Hmm.
hadn't done this at all. So yeah, it was very difficult.
And again, it speaks to the differences in various experiences for people. But the reason I asked that question is one of the things that I talked about in some of the videos I did on TikTok and Instagram was it doesn't just affect the accused, it affects their
Yeah,
family.
yeah,
You talk about your mom. I'm sure it was a devastating experience for her. Your brother had to have been a devastating experience for him too. I can't imagine, like you said, it was like 11 years old and have to deal.
yeah,
My brother's in jail or what. Um, and that's something that I'm trying to highlight to people is when a false allegation happens, it affects much more than you think it does. It's not just the one individual. Ryan's sitting in jail. His mother's got to deal with that. His immediate family. It sounded like you were, to be blunt with you, a little more fortunate than a lot of people because a lot of guys
yeah,
get
definitely.
abandoned completely.
Yeah,
They lose their job instantly, right? Because the employer doesn't want to be associated with someone of that kind of accusation. The immediate family is like, "Oh my God, what happened? And is it true?" That I mean, this is their mindset.
yeah.
Even so they start abandoning, and that's how guys end up isolated. I'm glad that you didn't quite get to that level. That you had a
Mm.
lot of support. I'm sure it helped you.
Yeah, 100%. I totally, totally agree with what you said there. A lot of people do get abandoned because of it. And I'm very, very fortunate. I've got a caring family and friends and support network. Even my work at the time, I was working with young people, I was working with children, and even they knew that I was innocent. There was a time, when I think about it now, there was a time I was arrested at work. The police came to my work with children around
Mm.
and arrested me. I was accused of going to her house at the time I was at work with my managers. So they knew exactly I was innocent. But because of the nature of the job, it became very difficult. So they were supporting me as well. So I'm very, very fortunate that I had that support network. And if people watching this who have experienced alienation and people have lost relationships and they feel isolated, reach out because people know, people understand like me. I get it.
Hmm.
And obviously Dan gets it as well. So if you are watching this, reach out for those support network because they are out there.
You mentioned like your employer knew you were there. I'm just curious. Did they say something to the police at that moment when you were being arrested? Go, wait a minute, he was here. Did they do anything like that, or were they not sure? Maybe the time frame.
At the time I was arrested, there was only me and another staff member there. The
Oh,
management
okay.
wasn't actually there, but they knew it was lies because they see me on CCTV walking into the building and signing in.
So
And
the police, you mean, knew it was at that point?
say that again,
Or
sorry.
was it the police that knew, or your coworkers? Just.
No, my
Oh,
co-workers
okay.
and my
Okay. I just wanted to
managers
clarify
knew.
that. Yep.
They knew I was innocent because they seen me walk in. I'm on CCTV, and I said to the police officers, "You do realise that I'm at work, and you do realise I'm a youth worker, working with children, and you doing this is detrimental to me, actually. And how on earth can I be at work on CCTV and be at her property doing whatever she's accusing me of doing? Do you realise how ridiculous that is? And even how many times I challenged the police on stuff like that, nothing got done.
Yeah.
Nothing got done at all.
And there's an interesting point because they're on site. I mean, logically, I'm sure people listening to this are going, why didn't the police ask to see the tapes, the CCTV at that point? Problem solved, right? Oh, wait a minute. If it was whatever date, time, and you have proof you were there, there's no need to arrest you. Now, I get,
Yeah,
the police would argue that they're just doing their job, so to speak. And yes, they are, but no, they're not, right? It's kind of a mixed area there, but it's just interesting that again you see the perception that he's automatically guilty, he's the guy, and it leads to things like this, and it has
mm,
again, you think about those children standing there watching someone they trust, because obviously in your
yeah,
position they have to trust you, being arrested. And maybe they did know why it was happening or what was the reason for it, or maybe they didn't, I don't know, but either way it's still going to affect them. I'm sure you experienced that with them, and like, can you just kind of highlight some of their reactions as it was happening?
it's difficult to because when the police came, um, it came to a point where I just knew every time I saw a police officer, I thought, here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get arrested again. So when I saw him, I thought, wow, seriously. And I actually didn't invite the police in. I said, let's go over there.
Okay.
Let's go. And I said to him, I kind of shown, I assume why you're here. You're listening to our lies again. And, they explain my rights and they're going to arrest me sort of thing. And I said, look, there's kids at the window there that can see everything that's going on here. Can you do me a favour and not put me in cuffs? I'm not going to run away. You know exactly where I am. You know my details. Just put me in the back of the car and I can try and work around it and say, I had to go somewhere. I had to answer some questions, sort of thing. So the initial reaction from the children, I never actually saw.
Okay.
And even after that, when I got released from custody and I went back to work, some of the children was asking me, what happened, sort of thing. I just said, I had to go ask some questions for somebody that I know that was in a bit of trouble. So I had to help the police. That was my way around it. But yeah, there was a lot of confusion with the children as well. And I think some of the older children knew as well. I think there was like, surely Ryan had done anything wrong because, I was the worker who was real playful and, I had a lot of laughs with the children. I wasn't like, do this, do that. They came to me for fun. They came to me to play football. They came to me to go games or whatever. They could rely on me and trust on me. So they just thought, they looked at me and thought Ryan's an amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
He don't do anything wrong. He's an angel sort of thing. He's perfect. That's what children might have thought of me. But to see me being arrested by police, some of them thought, yeah, I don't think he's done anything wrong. Maybe he just did just answer some questions and that's it. I don't know.
What's interesting though is while you're going through this torment, you were in effect putting the children first though, because you were
Yeah,
like, let's do it elsewhere. Let's get out of this area so they don't see anything. It just speaks to your character, right?
yeah,
Because a not so nice character, if I could put it that way, wouldn't have cared about the children seeing that, right? So even though you're going through this horrible experience, trauma, you put the children first. I mean, that again, it speaks to how men are, right? And I think in general, that's what most guys would do is they would put the children first in that. There are exceptions, of course, but it's just interesting to me to see that because it humanizes things is where I'm going with it, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that people understand, if nothing else, that men are human beings. We go through these experiences, we deal with them, but because with it, you'll always hear, well, mothers always put their children first, or women always put children first. Well, guys do the exact same thing. It's not a knocking on mothers, but men, fathers, however you want to phrase it, do exactly the same thing. We're different, but we're not so different, I guess is my point with all that.
The intentions are the same.
They are.
The intentions are the same.
So at this point, well, let me back up. So you spent 56 days in jail. If I could ask, how did you get out? What triggered you getting out?
Well, the same judge, he gave me a court date to go back into court from the prison, and I got given the court date, and I went there. I spent all day there in the cells down below, and 3 times I went there, and there wasn't enough time for them to see me. So there's me thinking I want to get out today. No, got to wait another day, another 2 days, another 3 days. Went back. This is gonna be it. I'm gonna be out. This is it. No, got to wait another 2 days or 3 days, all it was. You know what I mean? So when it came to the actual court hearing, it was the same judge again. I thought there's no point. Just keep me here.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no point. And I pleaded not guilty. And it's funny because she stood up in court and she gave her evidence. Now, the evidence, which can now be proved to be false, she presented screenshots of text messages. Now, with iPhones, it is so easy to manipulate text messages. The two things she's done here, she's rather one, copy my phone number into her number and just text herself and just adjusted the conversation, or she's got someone else to text her with my number saved as their name, which come at the top of the screen, and she's just said to this person, send this, send that. So she set me up. There was also a recording, an audio recording of the 999 call that she made, stating that I was at her house throwing stones at the wall. And in that recording, she's a great actor, by the way. It sounded really traumatic for her. Really great actor she is. You could hear banging, and you could tell it wasn't stones hitting a window. It was more like a knock of the, just a bang like that.
Rapping on the wall type thing.
Yeah. It wasn't a stone at all. And it was a night time that she accused me of going around there, and she was telling the judge that I was wearing this clothing, that clothing. It was quite significant stuff that she could see in the dark. And I just thought, started thinking, is she really want to get away with this? Like, honestly, what's happening here? And the judge actually said to her, if you are lying to me, I will get you charged with preventing a cause of justice. So for the judge to say that, he must have thought at some point, hang on a minute.
Yeah, he's now suspecting. If he's saying something like that, he's going, wait a minute, something ain't making sense here,
Yeah, but that didn't change the outcome. And I stood up in court, and basically the police told the barristers, the lawyers, and told the court that my phone was factory reset. Everything on my phone was gone. They were saying to me that I have deleted all evidence because she accused me of ringing her and texting her. They're accusing me that I factory reset my phone. Nothing was on there. Bearing in mind, when I got arrested, which got me sent to prison, I was in a nightclub. How on earth can I factory reset a phone in the middle of a nightclub? Because to factory reset a phone, to my understanding, you need a computer to do that. And I said to the judge, I have absolutely no idea how my phone has been factory reset. And I understand how that might come across.
Sure. Sure.
I understand that. And it was difficult for me to defend myself there because I knew how ridiculous it sounded. But I had no idea how it got reset. So I was found guilty. I was ordered to do so many sessions with probation. I had to go to probation. I'm assuming you guys have that across there.
Yep. Yep.
And I had to do so many sessions. And I had to go back to court to review how I'm doing with probation with these sessions. Am I attending? Am I on time? Am I complying with orders? Which I was doing. I was told to do these domestic abuse courses, and I said, absolutely not. I've done nothing wrong. It's actually her that needs to do this. But I stood my ground. I got released from custody. I was back out in the open world, and I went and collected my phone. I got my phone from the police, which took 2 weeks to do. And my phone was wrapped up in this seal bag. I've still got it with me now. And I got hold of it. And this is how ridiculous it sounds. I got hold of my phone. I turned it on, put my password in, and I told the police in the interview what my password was. I told them where to find my messages. I told them where to find everything. Turned my phone on, and before my mum pulled out the car park, everything I said in court was on the phone. It was her
Wow.
texting me. It was her texting me. It was her ringing me on no caller ID. There was
Wow.
one time where she FaceTimed me and she messed up there because when you FaceTime somebody, your number comes up and it was all there. The police told the lawyers, the barristers, the police told the judges, I factory reset my phone and deleted everything. Within 2 minutes, turn my phone on, it's all there. So from that point on, I went straight to my solicitors and I said, there you go. There's my phone. Have a look at that. And he looked at it and he said in his own words, he said to me, I can't believe it. Everything you said in court is right there. And he immediately launched an appeal against my charge, against my conviction. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
That
that's where the corruption comes into it. And when I challenged that to the police, I said, why on earth are you telling me? Are you telling the barristers, are you telling the courts that my phone was factory reset when it wasn't? Why are you telling them that? And the officer who did the investigation, she was physically shaking,
Oh,
physically in
I'll bet
fear.
she was,
She
cause
knew.
yeah.
And let me tell you something now, at this day and age where we are now today, she is not an officer.
Oh,
She is
really?
no longer an officer. No, and I wonder why that is. And
They drummed her out, so to speak.
yeah, so once I got my phone back and we launched that appeal, it was quiet for a couple of months. There was no allegations that was being made, nothing. As soon as my ex-partner, as soon as she found out that I was not breaching, I was challenging, I was appealing the charges, the allegations started again. So I believe the allegations started again because she knew that she was going to get found out. She knew that I was going to win. I had everything I needed. So she was trying to put my case, she was trying to put my side of it in jeopardy by accusing me of all sorts yet again.
Mm-hmm.
Which, bearing in mind, the restraining order is still in place. So it technically breached a restraining order. So the amount of times I was arrested yet again was ridiculous.
Yeah, because every time she made an allegation, they came and arrested you. But even knowing at that point what was on your phone, I mean, the police had to know at that point, right? I mean,
Well,
they're not stupid. I'm sorry,
yeah,
they know what's going on. I'm not going to give them a pass on this. Sorry. So clearly, the fact that they're even listening to her at this point, because they have evidence that she's manufacturing. Okay, yeah, you got to take her allegation somewhat seriously because you don't
yeah,
ever want to dismiss that.
yeah,
But not you got to look at it with a drawn decide at this point and say, wait a minute, all right, here it's happening again. Maybe we need to take a step back before we arrest this guy. But no, they went and just immediately arrested
yeah.
you.
And this is where things are starting to change as well, which I'll get into. Every time I was arrested, there was something different on the case. So their knowledge of the history wasn't great. And as you said, they don't know these things. There's something different every single time. And I think the police did know. And when I said earlier about brushing it under the carpet, that's what I meant.
Yep.
They
Yep.
knew what was going on, and they brushed it under the carpet. They thought, oh, never mind, it'll be all right. We'll bang him up. We'll put him in prison. It's fine. Absolutely not on my watch. It won't happening. I'm a very stubborn guy. I'm very stubborn. I fight for what's right. I fight for what I believe in, and I did exactly that.
And thank
But
God you
when
did, because a lot of guys at this point would have caved completely. I
yeah,
mean, and understandably, I'm not knocking them. I mean, the amount of mental anguish you're going through at this point, I mean, I can't even fathom it, but
yeah,
it most guys could not handle it. Most
and
anyone could.
at this point, you know, I was released from prison. It was the end of July, and um, I got my phone back in the middle of August, and I launched the appeal from that point on. So from August time, July, August, September, it was pretty quiet. Nothing was really happening. There was no allegations being made. But as soon as she found out I was appealing, that's when they started over again. The allegations started again. And at this point, I ain't seen my daughter since February time. So what's that? March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October.
Wow.
8, 9, 10 months without seeing my daughter. After seeing her nearly every day. The mental strain that had on you, the mental strain that puts on a guy, or even a woman, absolutely, in those cases,
Absolutely.
through parental alienation, it's one of the worst things a human being can endure. Going through alienation out of spite and jealousy and false allegations, fake stuff.
Eh,
It's
How
it's
old was your
immense.
daughter at this point, Ryan? How was
She was just over 2 years old.
so she's old enough to be aware daddy's not around at that point.
Yeah,
So in her mind, she's got to be going, "Where's daddy?" You
yeah,
know. I mean, yes, she's young. It's not going to be like, say, a 5 or 6 year old might think, but she's still thinking that, obviously. I can't even imagine what that was like for her. So again, to make my point that I'm trying to illustrate is it's not just affecting Ryan; it's affecting his entire family and his daughter.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And the hardest point about it as well, one of the hardest points about this is my ex-partner and our daughter lived 5 minutes away from me. So knowing that she was just around the corner and I couldn't go to her, I couldn't go see her, absolutely destroyed me.
oh,
You know,
that had to be torture. Absolute,
absolutely. It was absolute torture.
absolute
And
torture.
there's me sat there thinking, you know, there's a new guy on the scene. Is she calling him daddy now? And I want to be a father. I wanted to be there for my child, for our daughter. I wanted to be there. And the fact that I couldn't killed me. You get a lot of people out there who don't want to see the kids, who are deadbeat parents. And there's parents out there like me who want to see the child and they get alienated.
Hmm.
For what? For what? For their own spiteful, jealous needs. And I don't realize, as you said, I don't realize the domino effect. It affects the child. It affects the mother. It affects everyone around you.
It's a key point to make here is I hope people are listening to what Ryan is saying about his emotional state as a dad, because one of the things, you're on TikTok, I'm sure you see the videos. Well, there are always the single mothers out there going, "Dad doesn't want anything to do with the kids," right? I always look at that with a very, very jaundiced eye, because my ex to this day says that when it was completely untrue. I'm sure yours did. So it's almost like they're playing that card, right, to make you look bad, because I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you have to be mentally ill to even do this. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, right? Probably get in trouble for it. I don't care. Um, it's just taking it to a whole other level. To go public with that, it kind of makes them feel better about themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that's why when what I would say to people is, when you see or hear, and it goes the other way too. There's dads do the same thing to mothers, to good mothers. But if you hear, he's a deadbeat, or I hate the term sperm donor, or any of that, you need to look at that with a very open mind, to say you're hearing one side of the story. And I've actually challenged some of them and said, okay, I believe you. Put me in contact with your ex. I'll have him come on my show and talk about his side of it. Or, let me talk to him on the phone. I have yet. I've thrown that challenge out dozens of times. I have yet to have a single one take me up
Yeah,
on it. You know, and it
yeah,
kind of illustrates that there are exceptions. There are bad dads out there that do not want anything to do with their fathers. I am not trying to say there's not, but the majority of the time when you're hearing that, it's not true. Because as
yeah,
Ryan and myself both experienced, we go through I went through it too. I didn't see my kids for a while, and I'm still alienated from one of my kids. You know, even though he's 35 now, I haven't talked to him in 20 years. It kills me, absolutely kills me. And there's nothing I can do about it at this point. You know,
mm,
so I hope people hear what Ryan is saying here because it's something you need to understand here because
yeah.
we are again it speaks to the humanity of men and what we go through and that's something I'm trying to just hammer on all this. I know I'm beating a dead horse maybe, but it needs to be said.
I actually cover this topic on one of my TikTok videos, the differences between an alienated parent and a deadbeat parent. And what I have actually, realized throughout my experiences is that a lot of deadbeat parents are actually alienated
Mm-hmm.
parents. And I think there's a massive difference. And when you said there about, parents will alienate other parents because of guilt and try and make them look worse, it's because they know deep down that what they're doing is bad. So they try and deflect that
Yep.
evilness. I'll call it evilness because it is
It
evil.
is
It's child
evilness.
abuse. It's child abuse. They try and deflect that onto the parent. Oh, he is abusive. She is a narcissistic. I hear it all the time. He, she is this. They are. They this. Actually, what are you doing in this? And when you think about, I hear this saying quite a lot now. Why are dads being asked why they didn't fight harder for their kids? Why we're not asking the mother why he's got to fight in the first place?
That's a thing I always throw right back at him. If you're
Yeah.
expecting him to fight for him, why are you expecting him to fight for him? He shouldn't be have
Why
to
is he
fight.
fighting in the first
Yeah,
place?
why is
Why is
he?
he fighting in the first
Yeah.
place?
That when you hear that phrase from, and by the way, if a father said it, I'd be saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
If you're
100%.
forcing
Yeah.
the other parent to fight for their children, you are the problem, not the other parent. And I would say unequivocally, universally, that's the case. I'm sure there's exceptions, but 99% of the time, the person making that statement is the one
Yeah.
that's creating the issue.
Yeah. And I always say when you're pointing a finger at somebody else, there's always three pointing back at you. So
Yep, good
have a
point.
little think have a little think about what you're doing in that. It's not just all about them, it's about your reaction in that as well. So, if there is anybody watching this who is actually alienating another parent, why? Why the alienating? Why you been alienating? Is there a reason behind it? And I get it. In some cases, people will alienate parents because of safeguarding issues or welfare concerns. I get all that. But when it's out of spite and it's out of jealousy, and the father or the mother who's been alienated is a perfectly fit child, not perfectly child, a perfectly fit parent who can ensure their child is safe and is able to prosper in life. Why are they being alienated? There's no reason for it. They want to be there. They want to make a difference. They want to be there for the child, and that's it.
And as bad as it is for the alienated parent, the one that's really suffering is the child. And
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
when you, my belief is when you have this situation and it's proven, the person, the alienator, the one making the accusation, needs to lose the child. I'm sorry at that point. If you're going to go to that level, you are never putting the best interest of the child. You're not.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely. I will share something here about that as well. Um, I am I am going to be doing a video about this at some point. But the other night, I was putting my daughter to bed, and she's really loving, really, really loving. She always wants hugs, and she loves everybody. She's got a real kind heart, and she gave me a hug when I was putting her to bed, and she turned around and said to me out the blue, "This is why I've always wanted a daddy."
mm,
My 6-year-old daughter said to me whilst hugging me, "This is why I've always wanted a daddy,"
your heart
and
melted at that point. I can
it
say with absolute certainty.
it melted. I was so happy to hear that.
that she can say that to me and she loves me. But a part of me was like, I was heartbroken. Like,
Hmm.
my daughter has been denied having a father because of false allegations, because of spite and jealousy. And I'm sure that happens with many, 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 many other children out there. They're being denied access to a loving parent. And like you said, it doesn't just affect the parent, it affects the child as well. And they pick up on that. They'll
They
pick
do,
up on it.
and it affects them for life. It's not just a short-term thing. It's something that's going to affect them drastically for decades to come,
Yeah.
even if they get help. So just kind of go back to where you're at. So you get more allegations. I want to touch on the one thing that I read in one of the news articles about you. Is at one point they came to arrest you. You were, I think, in the shower. Police helicopter came over. Can you talk a little bit about that scenario and what you said? Because I think it'll illustrate to other guys that are going through what you went through just how dark it gets.
Yeah. It that was it was the beginning of the end for her, really. And just to go over it, I was at my cousin's house. I was at my cousin's house with, I think, 4 or 5 people, like witnesses there. And I have gone home. My friend dropped me off, and where I lived at the time, there was a police station at the top of the street. So I actually walked past the police station to get home, and I was running a bath. I was also on my video game with my American friends. Actually, I've got a lot of American friends on my game, and they support me quite a lot as well. Um, and the next minute, all I hear is a helicopter above the house, and I thought, a helicopter at this time at 2 in the morning. What the hell is going on here, sort of thing. So I've looked out the window and I've seen it, and the light is shining really close, and I'm thinking, oh God, what's happening here, sort of thing. And I go downstairs, I look out my brother's bedroom because at the time I was in an attic bedroom, there was 3 floors, and I was at the very top. So I've gone down my set of stairs and I've looked at my brother's bedroom, and I've seen all I see is two bright lights just in the window at me and shouting. And I thought, what the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't even explain how I felt or my thought at that point. I just thought, what is going on, sort of thing. And my mum was asleep at this time, and I said to my mum, the police are outside. There's a lot of police outside, and she's gone downstairs to the front door, and this is where she starts recording. And she's having a massive argument with the police, and the police that was there, as I said, was an helicopter, which cost around £7,000 to get off the floor. Never mind actually getting to the property, and that's not including the pilots. There was a dog section, so there was police dogs there, and there was around 3 or 4 different armed response teams there. And the significant thing about this, there's only so many officers in the area that can do that sort of job.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst they're there with me, based on a false allegation, elsewhere there could have been a really, really true, real life situation going on there where the armed police needs to be there. So because they was with me, the public was at risk if something happened. So, my mum's sat there shouting and swearing and very emotional with the police, what's going on, sort of thing. Are you off your heads? What's going on? And I just thought, there's no point. There's no point fighting this. I might as well go out there, say my piece, and just go in and just see and hopefully I'll come out alive. Hopefully I'll come out alive from this, and hopefully I'll get my freedom back or something. So I've gone out the door, and at this point, I wasn't aware of the weapons. All I saw from the window was the 2 bright lights. I wasn't aware of how many officers was out there. I wasn't aware of how many police cars was out there. I wasn't aware of the weapons, the full automatic weapons out there. I wasn't aware of all that. And here in the UK, we don't see stuff like that. We don't see guns.
Yeah, it's a
So
little different over there than here.
yeah,
Um,
we don't see weapons like that. We don't see guns. The police here don't carry guns. So to have all them automatic weapons pointing at me was traumatizing.
oh,
It was honestly, I couldn't. It was, I don't know how I was feeling at that time. And you're hearing the videos. I've uploaded a part of the video on my TikTok. I can't, TikTok won't allow me to upload the full video, unfortunately. But in that time when I walked out my house, I said to him, just shoot me. Just shoot me because I've had enough. I've had enough of what's going on. I've had enough of false allegations. I've had enough of my life being shattered to pieces. I'm trying to move on, and this keeps happening. I'm sick of you lot listening to her. I ain't been listened. Shoot me. I ain't living my life like this. And I was telling them all, do it. And even my mum said at one point, shoot us all, because we've all enough for you. My mum was saying to them, shoot us all, because we can't put up with it no more.
hmm
And, you know, they was telling me, put your arm, they just said, put your arms up, don't put your hands in your pockets, etc. And I just thought, you know what, why? Why should I comply with you? I've complied with the police bail, I've complied with a restraining order all this time, and yet here you are with me. The real criminal is down the road. And I said to the police, you're in the wrong place. And, you know, my phone was in my pocket at the time, and I've gone from my pocket to start recording, and the guns came up, you know, don't put your hands in your pocket, don't put your hands in your pocket, put your hands up, sort of thing. And I told them, I'm putting my phone on the floor. You can shoot me if you want. I'm putting my phone on the floor, so you know my phone's there because there's proof. The proof's there. And I tell them, and my mum, when my mum recorded it, you could hear me say it. Everything is on my phone. You'll see it. And we'll come back to the phone in a minute because it's quite convenient as well. And it didn't last very long. You know, I said to him, just shoot me. I've had enough of it. There's no point. You don't listen to me, sort of thing. And they've just said to me, come outside, come out the door, come out the gate. And I said to him, I'm getting my shoes. I'm getting my shoes. They're right there. Come in if you need to. Come with me if you need to. At this point, I didn't know what the allegation was.
hmm
So I was completely oblivious for it. So I've gone outside, my hands are up, and they're telling me to slow down. They're telling me to walk slowly. And I've gone, no. I've just walked straight up. I've just turned round and gone, just do it. Just do it.
hmm
And they're telling me to keep my hands down, keep my hands. And I'm going, no, just shoot me. Just shoot me. And, you know, they put me in the cuffs. And when I'm in cuffs, that's when they say to me, you know, you've been accused of firearms. And at that point, I started laughing. I was like, wow, this is something from a film, from a movie.
Jeez.
What? You know, a weapon, a gun. As I said earlier, in the UK, we don't have guns.
I was just going to say, let's take a moment to just kind of set the scenario. This is not the U.S. He's in the UK. They do not have guns there.
No.
None. I mean, you know, I don't want to get into gun control because that's not the purpose of this, but it's not what we have. You know, I own guns, all right? In my scenario, if that had happened to me, there's a very good risk that I don't know what's going on, right? Two lights are being shined in. I probably would grab one of my guns, right? Because I don't. It could be criminals coming in, right? What you experience over here would be called a form of swatting, right? So she got the police to respond, but to set the scenario, it is for the U.S. people listening to this. You have to understand the UK. You don't own guns, private citizens. So when an accusation is made that he has a weapon, that's why the response was what it was.
Yeah. And these officers wasn't like in plain clothing. They was all blacked out. The helmets was on. It was something like out of Call of Duty. You know, it was something I've never seen before. As you said, here in the UK, I wouldn't even know where to get a weapon from. I wouldn't know where to get a gun from. The police, the normal police officers don't carry weapons with them. They carry tasers and that's it.
Right.
You know, so to see a helicopter with the light on me, they see the dogs barking at me, you know, big dogs, to see the fully clothed police officers in all black and all these equipment and fully automatic weapons and, you know, aimed at me. I'm thinking, I have never seen this before. I have never experienced it before. It's just like, what on earth is going on, sort of thing. And this, it's crazy to think that that happened based on false allegations. One thing was said, Ryan has come to my house with a gun. He's come from the back way. He's thrown me down the stairs. He's put a knife to my throat. He's threatened me with a knife. He's cut my arms. He's cut my face. He's thrown me down the stairs, and he's put a gun to my head, a pistol to my head, and that's why they came. And to think, the only weapon, the only gun I've ever held in my life, is a water gun. It's a plastic gun, a toy gun, and I told him that in the police interview as well. The only weapon I've ever held in my life is a plastic gun. So for you to tell me that I've got a gun is ridiculous. Ridiculous.
And I'm sure after they arrested you, they tore that house apart looking for the gun.
No,
No?
no, no, they didn't.
Real?
They didn't.
Whoa.
No,
You just blew my mind. I have to be honest with you.
they didn't. They didn't even investigate it properly. So
Wow.
what basically what happened is when I was getting taken away to the police car, my phone was on the floor. You know, I will get to that point in a minute, but back to my phone. You hear on my mum's recording, Mum, my phone is on the floor. Get all of it. Don't give it to him. Everything's on the phone. All the evidence is there. And as soon as I said that, you see on the video, one of the officers come steaming through the gate, going for her. And I'm thinking, in that convenient, you're trying to hide the evidence, trying to get the evidence back again, sort of thing.
Yep.
So my mum got the phone in the pocket. Luckily, she didn't give him the phone. And at this point, when the officers start charging through the gate, my 11-year-old brother at the time, he sat there in the living room, in the front room, hearing everything. An 11-year-old lad, 11-year-old boy hearing all that. His mum and his older brother, who he looks up to, telling him to shoot us, telling the police to shoot us. So the phone, if it weren't for the phone, I don't know where I'd be again. But, you know, going back to them investigating the house, tearing the house apart, no, they didn't, not really.
I'm literally stunned into silence at that, Ryan, because
Yeah.
maybe it's a difference between the UK and the US. I don't know, but they would have that house would have been torn until they found it, right?
Yeah, you would have thought here in the UK because there's not many weapons about.
Yeah, even more so, right?
You would have thought, yeah, there were a thorough investigation. But you know, when I was in the police car, when my mum started shouting and screaming, I turned around to see what was happening, and that's when the officer got me on the back and slammed me onto the gate, not the gate, slammed me onto the bonnet, the front of the car. I know you guys call it different where you are from. It's not the bonnet.
Trunk is what we call it. Yeah, bonnet is a trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hood or something.
The hood. Yeah. The hood. Yep.
The front of the car, and he grabbed my wrist so hard it nearly broke. And I was actually questioned on that in the interview. Why is your wrist so bruised? Because your officer did that to me. It was your policeman that did that to me. That's why it's like that.
Wow.
But anyways, you know, my mum was recording still when they came into the house. She was taken into the living room, the front room with my brother, was crying his eyes out at this point. And they basically said to my mum, don't go through anything. Don't go around the pillows, the cushions. Don't do anything. And my mum said there was in there about 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. And I know for a fact that they didn't investigate. They didn't look into it properly because in my bedroom, my granddad served in the World War II, and I was close to my granddad, and I got a lot of his war antiques, I got a lot of his war stuff, and I have swords, not katanas, like swords.
Mm-hmm.
And if the police looked properly, they would have found those swords and confiscated them, but they didn't. So that suggests to me they didn't even look properly through my own bedroom. What they did find was a kitchen knife in the kitchen under the sink, and that's the one thing that tried getting me on.
Wait a minute. I again, you stunned me speechless, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of, as I'm listening to this, my mind is sitting there going, they knew it was all BS. Because if they especially in the UK, I'm thinking, right? if they even remotely thought that you had, let's say, a pistol, there's no way they're not leaving that house without trying to find that pistol. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's no, even the U.S. would do the same. They would, I would assume they would have had a search warrant here. I'm sure that, I don't know if it's called a search warrant there, but something similar.
On the lands, yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything. This is not like spur of the moment, 2 seconds, oh, we're going to respond. There's a little planning go, because those, like you said, those officers have to come from different areas, right? It's a SWAT team, basically.
Yeah.
For
it's
them,
planned. It's a planned,
absolutely
planned process.
So they had to know that you did not have a weapon, that this was all made up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am not going to cut them any slack here. I'll be blunt. I don't care. If I get in trouble with you two, I don't care. Right? Mm-hmm. There is no way they are not going in that house and tearing it apart, thinking you had a weapon. Because if they leave it behind, I mean, my God, you have an 11-year-old brother there. And it's the UK, not the US. I'm actually pissed right now, if you can't tell me. For you, I'm pissed because
you can see on my TikTok, one of the pinned videos is the armed police, and you see what there was look like.
Yep.
And my 11-year-old brother was stood there, and they're saying to him, "It's okay, not to worry about. Everything's gonna be all right." Oh yeah, everything's fine. You've just arrested my brother, he wants you to shoot him. It's just like, honestly, it's baffling. And like I said, if they really believed there was a pistol or any sort of weapon, they'd have turned that house upside down, as you said, and they would have found those World War II swords.
Right.
Obviously, they are being used. They're antiques. They mean a lot to my granddad. They did mean a lot to my granddad. Bless his heart, bless his soul. But they would have found that at least. But the one thing they found was a kitchen knife.
In the kitchen, by the way. Yeah.
Under the sink. Yeah. And they were saying to me, "Oh, what's this about?" And I said, What is it? Tell me what that is. So you educate me." I remember saying it because at this point, it's when the big investigator was there. She was investigating me in the interview, and she was, the dog's bollocks, as we call it. She was up there. And I said to her, "Would you show me it?" She went, "Can you tell me what that is?" And she went, "It's a kitchen knife." I went, "Right, where did you find it?" "In the kitchen and in the sink." And I went, "Oh, right, so you found a kitchen knife in the kitchen under the stairs. Why on earth are you questioning me about that?" And she went, "Because under the sink, a kitchen knife under the sink is a bit irregular. It's not common." I went,
"What?"
Sorry, just repeat that again. Sorry.
I'm just mind blown at this point. Go on.
When I tell my story now, I sit there and I think, do I sound crazy?
I could see it on your face, Ryan. Because like, you're in disbelief even now.
Even when I've sat there through it, I've experienced it, and I'm telling the story, I sit there and think, am I even making any sense? Because it's crazy. And this officer said to me, she's been doing it for 25 years. She thinks I'm lying. And I said to her at the end of the interview, "You need to retire and go stack shelves at Walmart."
Good for you.
I told her, "You need to retire because if you think a kitchen knife in a kitchen and in a sink makes me an abuser or whatever it is," I laugh because it's ridiculous. It is.
You know what?
Really is.
You have to laugh. And we're not trying to make light of the situation by laughing. Yeah. But the absolute absurdity of this whole scenario. And mind you, I want to kind of just circle back here and remind you what Ryan told him. Go ahead and shoot me, right? Your mindset, for lack of a better term, at that point you snapped, right? Temporarily, right? And totally understandable. How after all you've been through to have this happen, you're a better man than me. I got to be honest with you, because I don't know what I would, here in the States, it probably would not have ended the way it did with you. There, if you reached in your phone in your pocket for your phone at that point, they're probably pulling the trigger.
Yeah,
right?
and that's why it was so serious, this part of it, because my life was at risk. My ex-partner put my life at risk within that. One wrong move with me, and that's it. I've got a bullet through me.
And it was, but Ryan, it wasn't just you at risk at that point because your mother's around, your brother's around, other police officers are around. If God forbid one of them pulled the trigger and missed you, who knows where that bullet goes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people at risk here. This is not something to make light of. What she did in this scenario is put, I don't know how many people were there, however many people were there, let's say a dozen, just to pick a number, at risk. It wasn't just Ryan at risk at this point.
It's like I said earlier, though, you know, because they was with me, there's only so many officers that can do that job.
Mm-hmm.
So there could have been, at that moment in time, there could have been a real incident. There could have been someone out there.
Right.
There could have been a victim out there who is actually held at gunpoint or at knife point or whatever. There could have been an incident where those officers were needed, but they was there with me based on false allegations. So it wasn't just me that was at risk, or the people that was there at risk. It was the public,
the community
that was at risk as well.
The community at large is at risk also. I mean, this is, we're trying to like make people understand here, and I think most people will, the absolute level of seriousness that this episode is. This is not something to take lightly at all, because, and a lot of people would look at it and go, oh, it was no big deal. It was one guy here. No, it wasn't. Right. This is a huge deal.
And I didn't notice how common false allegations was until I went through it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even people that might be watching this or people looking at our pages, people might not be able to relate to this content, but somewhere down the line, they might fall victim of false allegations.
Well, and this is a conversation.
Anybody can.
I had the same thing with Jason last week, right? Is people will hear this and listen to it and go, yeah, well, that's not going to happen to me. Well, Jason said last week he didn't ever think this would happen to him, and you're saying the same thing, right? It's universal that I hear that from people when they get accused of a false allegation, whatever it is. I never thought that would happen to me. And I thought if I just explained myself, they would understand. And you're illustrating better than I ever could exactly how and why you need to listen to these things and get yourself educated, because you could be Ryan tomorrow. You just don't know. If we could, let's now, so that arrest has happened. I'm sure it goes into court, but you said this was the beginning of the end for her, right?
Yeah.
So can you kind of talk a little bit about what ultimately happened and how you got yourself cleared? And now she's in jail right now, correct?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I was arrested at that point. I was interviewed by the high-end officer. You know, I was accused of being under the influence on drugs. I did a drug test, everything. And I was remanded into custody for 3 days. Now, this is another reason why it's so serious. If I was found guilty of those charges of firearms and knife crime, that's at least the minimum 7 years in the UK, at least. With firearms, I reckon it'd have been at least 20. Obviously, the laws are different here in the US. I do believe the UK needs to adopt some of the US laws around this. But that's another story. You know, so I was arrested, sent to prison, and the third day in, I remember I was on we call it the induction wing, and I was getting moved from one cell block, which I think you guys call it a cell block.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting moved from one cell block to another, and before I moved, one of the officers went, "Kerrison," and I went, "Yeah, that's me." He went, "You're getting out," and I thought, "I'm getting out? Like 3 days? Like for what's being accused?" He went, "Yeah, you're getting out tonight," and I was like, "Wow, this is like massive." And it turns out that my solicitor, amazing solicitor, he and the other solicitor who was with him fought so hard and got all the evidence together. They got my phone together, they got the witness statements together, they got CCTV together, and they took it to what we call here judges' chambers. And they appealed it to the judges' chambers, and then that's when I got out. Even the officer that interviewed me, She said to me that she couldn't sleep for 3 days after that because she knew deep down that there was something not right.
Mm-hmm.
And when she realized that she put away an innocent man, that was it. She fought for me as well. And it's that same officer that got it to where it is today. If it weren't for her, it wouldn't have happened. None of this would be even happening.
Wow.
So I got released. I was then ordered to go to live with my uncle in the south of England. I'm from the north of England.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the other end of the country. Compared to America, it's tiny. It's
England is
like,
about the equivalent of the state of Missouri here, just to give
yeah.
perspective.
And I believe Texas is even bigger than the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was ordered to go live with my uncle, which is 250 miles. I think you guys use kilometers. I'm not sure what kilometers
We're
is.
miles here.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Okay. Yeah. So 250 miles. I was told I wasn't allowed to go in the region where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
I was placed on tag, which basically states it shows the authorities where I was, where I am. I've been in the property at a certain time. This was something I recommended months before that. I even told the police, put a tag on me, and you'll know where I am. So when she accuses me, you'll know where I am. And yeah, I didn't get listened to anyways within that.
Mm.
So they finally put me on tag. And about 7 days later, she was arrested for perverting the course of justice and perjury. So she was under investigation. So, you know, when she was arrested, I I didn't think of anything. I just thought she'll get away with it. She has done for the past year or so.
Mm-hmm.
So she was arrested. She was released on police bail, and their conditions was to not contact me, not go anywhere near me. Quite the roles sort of reverse at this point. This is where the tables start to turn.
Mm-hmm.
The allegation with the firearm was so serious. That's when things started to click together. So when I say that was the beginning and the end for her, that's when the police started to think, hang on a minute, it's really serious now. It's got to the point. They didn't find anything. Judge's chambers got me out, so you had to investigate it even further. And like I said, that investigating officer, the officer that interviewed me, she knew deep down that I was innocent. And I found out down the line that she was also done wrong by the police at one point, and that's why she's in the force now. So it meant quite a lot to her, my case. So the reason why the case got here, and I always say this, the reason why the case got to where it is because of her, the investigating officer, and selected officers as well around the case, and my resilience with it. The evidence I gained, learning my rights as a human being, as a father, and she, no pun intended, she shot herself in the foot. It went too far.
She took it too far, yeah.
It took it too far. She was arrested. She was arrested by the same officer who arrested me, the same woman who got to where it was now. And I've actually got the police recordings now because there was disclosure. And I can listen to their recording, their interview. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
I was going to say, you can tell us if you want how you felt at that moment.
It's amazing. The officer was laying her out. She was, my ex-partner was like, yeah, he's done this, he's done that. And then it turned. Well, Ryan was here at this point. There was witness statement to say this. There was CCTV here. The police actually went out and got, they examined my phone properly this time, examination. They call it a level 2, and they did a cellulite report, which basically means at the time I was supposed to be at our house with a firearm, I was texting somebody else. And here in my city, when you're texting somebody or there's Wi-Fi or some sort of connection going to your phone and from your phone, it goes to a certain point in the city. And my text messages was going to a certain point in the city that was the other side to where she lived. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, so it goes here
explain that?
in the U.S. We would say it's hitting a cell tower, which is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
pinpointing where you are, because they can
yeah,
here it would actually, I think they can get 2 or 3 towers. They can triangulate you.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not certain on that, but it shows you're, within a certain radius. This is where you are. So
yeah,
it's not like, if she's claiming you're across town at her place and you're, 10 miles away. I'm just picking a number. It's kind of damning evidence at that point. Um,
yeah.
and I have
That,
to
that's
go ahead.
that's how you put it. Yeah, it was just the towers, and in the interview, I hear her say the investigating officer's like, well, the cellular saying that he was here, and the CCTV saying was here, and the witness statements say he was with them at this time, and we see Ryan walking past the police station at the time he was supposed to be at your house, and you hear her say, I don't know how he's done it. I don't know how he's done it. He's got someone else to do it, sort of thing. And it's just like, why? What do you know what I mean?
I mean, you've
It's
already, like you said, shot yourself in the foot. Now you're doubling down on that. I guess you want to
yeah,
shoot the other, because, like you just mentioned, and I remember reading this in the newspaper article. I was going to ask you about it was the police station CCTV at one point, right? Or you were walking by it and they had it.
yeah.
Kind of hard to fake that one. I mean,
It's kind of hard to say. She was trying to say that the cell towers, it was somebody else on my phone texting this person,
that's
and she was saying that the CCTV, it's somebody else that looks like him. And when I was at her house, apparently she accused me of being at her house with a firearm, wearing um, grey pants. I think you'll call it trousers,
pants,
joggers.
pants, yeah,
Yeah,
pants.
yeah, grey pants. And at that time, I never owned grey pants. And when I walked past the police station, I was wearing something completely different. So according to her, I somehow teleported, and I laugh. I
Yeah,
somehow teleported, and
again, it's a serious situation. Don't get us wrong, but you have to laugh, right? Because it's just
yeah,
pure absurdity.
yeah,
So, long story short, she gets arrested, goes to court, and if I remember right, somewhere around 4 years of jail time.
yeah. So it took, we call it the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, and the police give the information to the CPS, and they then decide whether if the case can be charged or not, and then they take it to the courts. And the CPS actually said, no, we aren't going to charge her. There's
Mm,
not enough evidence to charge her. At this point, there was 120 items of evidence against her, but according to the CPS, there was not enough evidence. So I had to appeal that to different parts of the UK, and it eventually got back round again. And the same officer who arrested her and myself with the firearms, she went and arrested her again based on fresh evidence. The big turning point here is her phone was seized. So the police did a report. They examined her phone, and on iPhones, there's an app called Notes, so you can write notes down.
yep.
The police found out that she planned everything. She had everything written down. She had a script of what she was going to say to the police.
Oh,
She had a script of what she was going
no.
to say to the call operators. She had a script of everything she was going to say and how she's going to do it, and that was the turning point, the bigger turning point.
Wow.
Which, yeah.
So,
So
not to be, well, I'm going to be mean. That's not the brightest move. She must not be the brightest bulb in the bunch. I mean, come on. Oh man.
she got tripped up in her own man. She got the power got all of her. She thought, got away with it this many times. I got away with it the first time, the second time, the third time. I've got away with it the 15th time, the 16th
Right.
time, the 17th
Yeah.
time. So she upped the ante, thinking, oh yeah, I'll get away with it again. And this is why I don't know if there's such thing in the US, but I believe there should be a false allegations register. So when someone makes a false allegation and they are found guilty of that, they are being proven, they've been charged with false allegations, they get put on a register, and in the future partners or whether employers, they have to disclose that, yeah, I've made this allegation before, it was
Wow.
found to be guilty. I think that should happen. I think that should be a thing. And I'm pushing to the government in the UK that should happen. in the UK, there's a domestic abuse register, and
Yes,
it's
I
the
was
same
just going to
thing.
say, yeah, it's the
Yeah,
same as a domestic violence register, or,
yeah. A
if you
sex
get
offenders register.
child
We have a
molestation, you go on a
yeah.
registry and all that stuff.
It's
I
the exact same.
I have to
So
be honest with you, Ryan. I've never considered something like this. I think it's a stroke of genius you have here,
yeah,
because it is appropriate, right? Because if you're found guilty of a false allegation, and we joked a little bit about the whole scenario, but the reality is a very serious situation where people could have been killed, including
yeah,
Ryan, when the swatting happened. I'm using the term swatting there. Um, yeah, that should be registered. Because, like I said,
yeah.
she got, I think, 4 years in prison. You said she's going to get
Three
out.
years, 9 months. Yeah.
Yeah,
When she gets out, there's nothing there to say that yeah she's been charged with this. Yeah, she's got a conviction, and that will stay on the record for so many years. But that only states perfecting the course of justice. It doesn't state about false
right. That's
allegations.
what I was going to say. What is it? I was
Yeah,
going to ask you that. Like, she gets out, not that she's free and clear, because, like you said, she has a conviction on her record, but there's no nuance to that. It's just a
yeah,
line of words, right?
yeah,
So the
exactly.
next guy that comes along might not have any idea what you've been through.
Yeah, and what happens is, yeah, when she was making allegations, they had to investigate that and assume it's true. I get that, but what I see that happens all the time now in court cases is someone will be accused of something. So you've got the accuser and you've got the person who's being accused.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who's being accused, they are investigated, and in the end, if they are found not guilty, why? They've either done it or they haven't. And if you haven't done what they've been accused of, that means the person who's made the allegation must be lying.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens here in the UK is, let's say, for example, I make an allegation against you. You are investigated, and after a while, for court cases and police proceedings, you are found not guilty. The evidence says that you didn't do anything that I accused you of. And what happens is, that's it. It's done. It's over with.
Mm-hmm.
But hang on a minute. I must have lied.
Right.
I must have lied to the police and the judges. I must have tried to put you at risk and put you in jail or whatever it is. So essentially, yeah, he's been let off. You've been let off not guilty. You can move on. But I've still got away with that. And what happens is when people get away with things like that, it manifests on their brain. It manifests in them. And that's what happened to my perpetrator. She got away with it so many times.
Right.
So she thought, oh, I'll do it again then.
Yeah, she thought she was
So,
bulletproof, to use, not to use a
yeah,
pun again, because, like you said, it became a repeated pattern, and she never faced any consequences. One of the arguments the opponents to what we're talking about will say is, well, we don't want to prevent someone from making an allegation, and if we put
yeah,
these things in place, it's going to reduce that. Yes, I see your point, but look at this situation. Uh,
yeah,
a question I have for you, Ryan, because this came up with Jason last week, is even though he was completely exonerated, everything cleared, he still has on public record that he was arrested and indicted. I'm just curious if the UK is different. Did they remove all documentation that you were arrested? Because you were arrested multiple times. So if someone ran a background check on you, would that come up? I guess is the question I have.
So if an employer was to do a background check on me, the arrests when I was arrested, they wouldn't come up. But on my record, in the database in the police,
Mm-hmm.
it still says I've been arrested so many times. It will still say I've been to prison. It will still say I've been charged
That's
and
my
been
point.
felt
Yeah.
guilty. Yeah, it will still say all that.
Yep.
So, public record, I don't think we have that in the UK. I'm not sure. There's no one can Google my name and find out what I've been arrested for. No one can do that. Um, there might be something where they can request that under certain circumstances, but in terms of my police record, it hasn't been cleared. Absolutely not.
Right. And that.
The thing is with that, even though it might be rubbish, but I'm going to use that because now I've been found I'm innocent and I
Mhm.
can prove that and everything's happened. I In the UK you can request I think it's um the freedom to rights of information or something. So I can request every documentation, everything that happened with me and the police. I can request that and have that in my possession, and then I can use that and say, "This is what happened based on false allegations."
Right.
So even though the police record hasn't gone away, and yeah, it might be rubbish, but I'm going to use that actually, and I'm going to say to people, and I'm going to use that in my story going forward. This is what I got arrested for here. This is what I got arrested for here. This is how many times I've been arrested. Do you know what I mean? So
I do.
I'm going to use that.
And that's something that I would encourage guys that get to anywhere near the level of Ryan Wood did. And I had this conversation with Jason off air too, is he carries a paper with him showing he was exonerated and all that, so that he can show people. Because if you Googled him, it's, you can find that he was arrested and indicted. That'll never go away. And I think that needs to change, by the way. That's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Both UK and US, because I get that it's public record, and that's their argument, was it's just public record. But those need to be cleared at that point, because this is 20 years from now. If you go to get a job, you're 27. So let's say you're 47. You go get a job and they run a background check and find this. You're telling your story now, but by then it's kind of faded, right? Yes, you can present your side of it, but there's employers out there that are just going to run the background check. They might have hired you, see that, oh my God, this guy was arrested. No way I'm hiring him. You may not even know they're doing it at that point.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to you. And that's
and that actually happened to me.
Did it? Okay, so you already experienced
it. Not like that. Yeah. So before I got sent to prison the first time, she actually went to the press and shared her story, and she ran my name through the dirt. I was made out to be a monster throughout the UK. I received threats from people I didn't know. And after it all came out, even years down the line, my name was still on there. My name was still on Google. People could search my name and it'd still be there years after. But since she got sent to prison, and I've been wanting to share my story, all those have been removed, apart from one. And the one that can't be removed, they have amended it. They've put, it's being corrected, which is, but the point is, absolutely, in certain cases, in most cases, it is out there and it's not fair. I'm grateful that mine did get removed, but a lot of people out there, it don't get removed.
And that's the point. Is a lot of time you were able to get a lot of it removed. Believe it or not, Ryan, we're over 2 hours already, and I'm okay with that. But let's kind of, I want to get a couple more things before we go. So one of the things I want to talk about is, obviously you had to pay a lot of legal fees. Or did you not? I guess, can you talk a little bit about the financial cost to you?
Well, to be fair, I was quite fortunate. I know that there's people out there who pay absolute thousands on this stuff. With the family court stuff, I represented myself.
Okay.
So I didn't have a solicitor. I was my own solicitor, and I know that there's people out there who don't have the experience or knowledge or even the confidence to represent themselves based on their cases. So the family court stuff, actually, it only cost me £250 to be fair, which isn't a lot, and that was just to start off the application. With the criminal stuff, again, I was very fortunate. A lot of my when I was represented by solicitors and the actual hearings, it was paid for me by we call it legal aid.
Okay.
So we can get support around that, because I wasn't earning above the required amount. I was earning under part at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get a solicitor through legal aid, which I'm grateful for. But the point that I make here is, who do you think pays the solicitors? Who do you think pays the hearings? Who do you think pays the judges? Who do you think pays the armed police responses? Who do you think pays the arrests, the police custody? Who pays the police the prison sentences? Not me, not her.
it's taxpayers' money.
Right.
And now that I'm earning more than enough, I actually contribute to the taxpayer. So technically, I'm paying for that, and millions of people in the UK are also paying for that. Only one person who ain't paying for it, and that's the perpetrator. So in terms of financially, for me, in terms of the cases, no, I wasn't really affected by that.
Okay.
But I was still affected because I lost my job and I was being supported by a family. I had to pay that back in quantities. So I wasn't earning a living. So even though financially I wasn't paying towards the proceedings, I was still financially a lot worse off and in debt really with family and friends. I'm grateful it was just family and friends and not loan sharks or anybody like that.
And that's
Losing my job and everything like that. So and that affected my pension. You know, when I retire, there's not a lot of money in there now because of that. There should be a lot more in there, but there isn't. So even though it hasn't cost me much for the proceedings, but financially, it has still set me back.
I hate to put it like you got lucky, but I guess you
Yeah,
did.
I
And no
did.
matter, yeah,
I did get very lucky.
Um, it begs the question that someone asked after seeing the last podcast with Jason, which is, have you looked into, and UK law is different than US, but could you sue her for, say, defamation or any of this? Obviously, she's not probably got no money, but could you some sort of way to kind of recoup your losses by suing her? Is that a possibility? Have you looked into it?
I, I have looked into it, and in terms of suing her, I'm not sure, but there is ongoing proceedings in terms of getting compensation from the police,
Okay.
and it won't be a couple of pennies or a couple of cents. Let's just say that. And you know, when I do talk about compensation and talk about money, it's not for me. I always say it's my daughter. You know, because even though I was, like I said earlier, I was financially set back because of that experiences. I don't own my own home at the moment. You know what I mean? I live with family still with my daughter, and I ain't got the money at this moment in time to buy my own property because the prices here are ridiculous. The homes in America are so much cheaper and they're so much better as well. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. But anyways,
That's a conversation I would love to have. Maybe I'll have you back on because
yeah,
we would have the opposite viewpoint because housing
yeah,
here right now is getting insane, especially where I live.
yeah,
I live in Southeast North Carolina. Everybody's moving here. So like I bought my house that you see behind me 5 years ago and it's already doubled in value. I mean, it's insane what's happening here, but that's a whole other conversation.
yeah.
Um,
But
kind of, go
all
ahead.
the money that I'm gonna get from the police, or you know, if there's a way that I can, you know, sue her, all the money will go towards my daughter's future.
Hmm.
So you know, making sure I've got a stable accommodation for her because at this moment in time, my daughter is gonna stay with me until she's 18, and I will fight for that. I'm in a good position to fight for that as well. Very good position, obviously. And also, the money's going to go towards her education when she's older. It won't be spent on me or for my own benefit. It'll be spent on what's right. And for me, what's right is my daughter and what she needs.
And that leads me to one. I've just got a couple more questions, and one of them
Yeah.
is how's your daughter doing with all this? Does she? And again, share only what you wish, but is how's she doing, and how does she feel like mommy's not around right now? So, how's that working for you guys?
I am absolutely stunned and amazing at how resilient my our daughter is. She's so adaptable. Obviously, she lived with her mum most of her life, in a different city as well, because she moved to a different city, you know, because she was claiming I was abusive, etc. So for my daughter to move into my full-time care, moving in with her nana, who she didn't see, and building that relationship back up with myself, my nana, her uncle, her granny, and to move school in a completely different place and meet new friends. She's done absolutely incredible. She's so amazing, and I don't know how she's done it. I look up to her, and I always say I'm the reason why I'm here today is because of her. And you know, her school grades have gone up since she's been with me. She had 81% attendance at school.
whilst with her mum, but while she's been with me, she's got 100% attendance. She was working below expectations in school when she was with her mum. Now she's working above expectations. She has a healthy relationship with all of us from my side of the family. Um, in terms of her relationship with the other side of the family, her mum's side of the family, she still has that bond and that connection. My daughter goes to her other nana's house every Thursday evening, and that's why I'm doing this now because she's away.
Okay.
I don't speak about this stuff when my daughter's around. Um, so to protect her, obviously.
Good for you, by the way, for doing that for two things. One, not talking about it around her, but two, making sure that she still has the connections to your ex's family because they are her
Yeah,
family also,
yeah,
and they should not lose connection with her. They didn't do this stuff,
yeah.
So I'm
I did
kudos to you for
mention
that.
this. Thank you. I did mention this in the court as well because when we was talking about the contact, what's going to like going forward, because the judge was basically saying, how would you like contact to be? And I said from day one, from the application, I said from day one that she needs to have a relationship with both sides of the family because it's not about me, it's not about her mum, it's about our daughter. She is in the middle of all this, and I do not want to come in between the relationship between our daughter and that side of the family. I don't want to do, and I said this in court as well. I don't want to do what her mum did to me and my family because there's no benefit in that for our daughter. I'm not. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be honest with you. You know, her that side of the family, our daughter loves them. Our daughter
Hmm.
feels safe for them, and I feel like she's safe with them as well. So why should I come between that? So in terms of contact, she goes and sleeps over. The court was recommending that she goes over on an evening and then we return to my care on the Thursdays. But I said no. Why? Let her have her overnight because when her mum, when my perpetrator was first into prison, my daughter was living with that nana, the other side, the other nana, from the side of the family.
Hmm.
So she was there for 4 weeks. So my daughter got into a routine of sleeping there. And I thought, well, instead of just doing it on, just evening contact, why not do it overnight to maintain that and maintain that relationship? So whilst my daughter is there, she has telephone contact with her mum from the prison. Um, and on the last weekend of every month, she will go and have a visit in the prison. And there's been a lot of work done with our daughter to prepare her for that. Going into that environment, it can be really,
I was gonna say that must
taunting
be
and
tough. Yeah.
it's very tough. And that was one of the things I raised. I said, I think it's important that our daughter maintains a relationship with her mum after everything that's happened. Um, for a little girl to go into that setting, is that going to be safe for her? Is that going to be traumatizing for her? Is she going to feel safe and comfortable doing that? And a lot of work has been done around that to make sure she does feel safe and comfortable. And she's been seeing her mum once a month, face to face, since she got sent down. Yeah, it was since December. So she's been seeing her mum once a month for the past 6 months, and she feels fine with it. And funny enough, you know, my daughter doesn't even talk about her much now. She doesn't talk about her mum much. She doesn't seem excited to go see her. And in a
Wow.
way, that's quite sad for me. I feel that's quite sad because I want I want my daughter to feel that connection with her mum. I want my daughter to feel like she can go to her mum when she comes out. I want her to feel like she can go to her mum and talk about anything. Do you know what I mean? And for her to not even talk about her anymore, I actually talk about her more than she does now,
Wow.
just so she don't forget about her. And she doesn't seem excited to go to her Anna's house on a Thursday anymore. She's just so happy and content with us. She gets everything that she wants, and it's yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on there, but you know, my she's safe, she's content, she's progressing in life. She's so much happier, so much healthier. She's gained healthy weight now. She's got a good appetite. She's sleeping well. There's just absolute no concerns whatsoever, and I'm still trying my best to make sure my daughter maintains that relationship with her mum, even after everything she did to me and my family.
And that's
I'm
that.
still
That's what I was going to say, Ryan. And I hope people are listening to what he's saying right now. Your situation is as bad a situation as I've heard in all my years of doing stuff like this. It's right up there. If it's not number one, it's 2, 3 at, even considering the fact that, one, you could have been killed, right? 2, you could have faced decades in jail. All of that, you're still putting your daughter first and recognizing that her mom is still part of her life.
Yeah.
I applaud you, my friend. I am applauding you because, again, for those listening, this is how dads think and do. We don't get credit for this, right? Everybody hears the bad side about dads, and there are bad dads. Don't get us wrong. There are. But this is the norm for what fathers will do. They will put the child first over and over again. And again, I applaud you, Ryan, for everything you're doing, because if anyone had a reason not to do it, it's you.
Yeah.
And yet you still put her first.
I'm not gonna lie. I openly admit it, and I even told the judge in the family court. There's a hell of a lot of people in my situation that would have gone, absolutely no chance. You're not seeing her again.
Exactly.
And that's it. There'd have been a lot of people who have done that. And don't get me wrong, they was at a point where I felt like doing that. I felt like, why should they? But I see the bigger picture. It's not about me. It's not about what I want. It's not about my needs. It's about our daughter's needs. And I say our daughter. I don't like to say my daughter. I know I've said it a few times, but I always refer to our daughter because she's our daughter. Our daughter has 2 parents.
Exactly.
And that's how it should be.
Yes.
And that's how it should be. And it's not about me, it's about our daughter. So if our daughter needs her mum, brilliant, go for it. If our daughter needs her nana outside of the family, brilliant, go for it. And I even told the judge, I looked in the judge's eyes and I said to her, there's many people out there that would say no to this, that would say you're not seeing her again. And there's many people that would make excuses up as well. But I am not going to alienate her. I'm not going to alienate our daughter from them because our daughter loves them. And essentially our daughter needs them as well. And I ain't going to come between that. That's not to do with me.
I have to tell you, I'm getting a little verklempt right now hearing you talk about it because it makes me feel good. It really does. It just shows, again, the quality man you are and the character you have.
I always said the only way that I would stop contacts is if it was detrimental to our daughter's care. Mm-hmm. So if she was at risk of harm, any safeguarding concerns or welfare concerns, that's when I put boundaries in place. And that's when I'd say, hang on a minute, let's explore this a little bit. And even now, we have a parenting app on our phones, and I recommend it to any parent out there. I will make a video about it on my TikTok at one point. And I try my best to keep everyone on the same page. Me, my mum, and my ex's mum, because we're the main three that are involved in our daughter's life at the moment. Mm. And there's been times, even now, where my daughter's mum's, her nana, from that side of the family, has been really difficult with me and really challenging. And the times where I just think, why am I being so nice? There's been times where I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I being so, open and accepting? And there's been times I'm going, sack it. But as I said earlier, it's not about me and what I need and what I want to happen. There's still a small part of me saying, just sack them off.
Right.
But how is that going to benefit our daughter? It isn't.
Well, I totally can understand why you would feel that way, but you're doing what you should do. Put your daughter first. One final question before we close things up. I want to ask you, having all this experience now, is there any advice that you would give to men in general about how to protect themselves from, God forbid, going through this horror that you've gone through? Any suggestions you might have?
Yeah, definitely. So what I will suggest is, see my TikTok page. I've got a lot of advice videos on there.
Why don't you go ahead? I was going to ask you, the next question I was going to have is how can people follow you? So go ahead and talk about the TikTok page. Go ahead.
My TikTok account is my full name, Ryan Kerrison, with the number 8 at the end of it.
On there, you will find advice videos, a little bit about my story, and genuine videos about, parental alienation and false allegations. There's a lot of advice on there that I took. In terms of advice given to you, to people watching this, not only look at my TikTok, but learn the laws, learn your rights as a human being, and learn your rights as a father or as a parent. I know the laws in different countries. I get that, but learn your rights and use them and stand up for what's right. Don't ever give up, and always put yourself, your own self-care first within this, because like I said earlier, with mental health and my feelings, I was neglecting myself at one point. I felt suicidal. You have to look after yourself. You've got to make sure you're okay and your self-care is up there, because if you're not okay, you're not going to make progression. You're not going to move forward. So understand what you need physically and mentally and emotionally. What do you need? Focus on the things that you can change and focus on the things you have control over. Because if you focus on the things that you can't change or you have no control over, you're not going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And do not self-sabotage yourself. I understand that through parental alienation, you just want to go around there and take your child. I get it. But doing that is going to dig a deeper hole for you. So learn the laws around you as a human being, as a parent. Look after yourself and don't ever give up. And connection. Find people who can relate to you and talk about your feelings. Talk about what's going on for you. Because we are all men, we are all human beings, we all feel these emotions. And I tell you something now, talking about your emotions makes you a bigger man than it is bottling it up.
Amen, brother. I 100% agree with you on that. And I will put a link to Ryan's TikTok in the show notes if you're watching this on YouTube and Spotify. If you're listening to it on Apple, I will also have it there. So you can go find Ryan. It's Ryan Kerrison, Kerrison. I hope I spelled that right. 8.
Yeah.
And I highly encourage you to follow him. Ryan, from the bottom of my heart, I'm getting verklempt again. Thank you for sharing your story, for being willing to be open and be what we all need more of, to be a great dad, to be a great man, and to try and help others, for all the horror you've been through, for your willingness. I can't say thank you enough on behalf of everyone and myself.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And as I said before, I know if millions of men are out there who are going through the same thing that I've gone through, and they're on the verge of giving up. And when I say giving up, that could be unaliving themselves, so deep in depression, or they're giving up on the children or the case. If they look at my case and think, God, Ryan went through prison and all that, he lost everything. Ryan lost his freedom, his child, and he came out the other end of it. I'm not saying my case will fix everybody. I'm not saying my advice will fix everybody, but there's hope. And you have to keep fighting, and you have to do whatever it takes to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
So please don't give up.
Never give up, and don't do it just for yourself, but your children too.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to go ahead and wrap things up on that. Thank you again, Ryan.
Thank you, Dan.
Folks, if you've listened this far, give us a like, all right? Help me get this word out on this, because Ryan's story needs to be told over and over again, because it's not just him. All right. I talked about Jason last week. I'm talking about Ryan now. I've done videos myself, just as Ryan has. We need to educate everyone on this. It's not just about helping men. It's helping all their families. It's helping society in general. Everything that Ryan brought up. It is so important. The more we talk about this, the more people will be better off. And most of all, it's the children that are going to benefit. So please like this. Hey, if you've watched this far, subscribe to the channel. I've got more videos and podcasts coming up to talk about this and other issues. And thank you so much for watching. And again, thank you to Ryan. This is Dad. I'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.